Okay, so the other way to apply an effect in Pro Tools is to put an insert on a track in the mixer, which applies the process to the entire track. Now to do that, as I say, you need to have your mixer in the front, or you need in the edit window mode, you can choose to display the inserts within on the track there. I'm not going to do that because I find it gets in the way, but you can do that if you prefer. So I go to find the inserts panel of the track that I want to put the effect on, and I click on one of the nodules. You can have up to 5 inserts on a track, so I click on that insert nodule and I get a list of plugins that I can apply to the track. Now, sometimes they come up as multi-channel plugins, some come up as multi-mono plugins. The multi-mono ones are usually duplicated by the multi-channel ones, and in fact, probably while you're working on a Pro Tools LE, it's really not going to make much difference which one you choose. It's mainly if you're working in, say, 5.1 or 7.1, there are some plugins which accommodate multi-channel, whereas there are some which you would have to apply as multi-mono, which basically means that it applies the same plugin, again in a 7.1 file, it would apply it 8 times for the 8 channels of the 7.1 document or sound file. But again, most of the time when you're working in stereo, that's really not going to be an issue to you, so you could choose multi-channel plugin, and you'll notice that, as I said before, most of the effects are duplicated from the audio suite, are duplicated in the inserts menu. So here again, I could choose to apply reverb, so I'm going to choose deverb from here, and we come up with a window which is almost indistinguishable from the one we got as the audio suite pop-up. Certainly the parameters that you have for controlling the reverb itself are exactly the same. It is essentially the same plugin. The difference is the host. So up here there are differences. So you've got a bypass switch up here. Again, you've got some a means of recalling presets, and you've also got an auto and a save button up here, which I will come back to. But essentially, the plugin is using it's exactly the same effect as the audio suite version. But here, as I say, you're not applying it to just the region; you are applying it to the entire track. So anything on audio 1, because that's the channel that the effect is applied to, will be affected by that reverb. So I'm going to have to skip a bit. Actually, I'm going to get rid of this first, this opening section, and just have that first bit, because that's all we really need for demonstration purposes. So it's applied it to, and you can hear, even when I stop the file playing back, you can still hear the reverb on the end. That's because, again, it's applied to the track rather than to the file itself. So I mean, that's fairly straightforward. You can apply all sorts of plugins in that way, and in terms of how many or what you put in the inserts panel here, basically they operate in series. So the deverb would be applied first, and then you would then you might have an EQ or something like that that's applied afterwards. Actually, I'm not going to use an EQ there. What should I use instead? A delay, just pop that in. Okay, so this time we get a different window pop up, again with the same environment stuff at the top, and then the parameters for the plugin below. I'm not going to do that. I'm just showing you that that's possible to do that. So when, again, if you were to bounce, let's pretend that this is your final finished track, and that you want to apply your reverb to it when you bounce to disk. What I suggest you do, once again, is to make a selection, because if you were to just go to File and to bounce to disk, at this point ProTools will automatically apply the, well, basically it will bounce up to this point, which is the end of the last region that it finds in the session. But again, that is not going to accommodate your reverb. So you would need to make a selection that accommodates that reverb and then bounce to disk from there. Hopefully that makes sense. Let's go back to the deverb window, and I'll just point out that you can wiggle any of these faders while the that this is the difference between a plugin and an audio suite plugin. So an inserts plugin versus an audio suite plugin. The inserts plugin will allow you to change parameters while the piece is playing, whereas the audio suite one, you set the parameters and they remain the same throughout the process. So when it processes the file, the parameters remain the same. Now that's a great thing with the inserts thing, because it means that, you know, as you play back, I can change the amount of diffusion in the room and the decay length, so it becomes drier or wetter. Etc. Now that I could do with any process that I applied. I can change the parameters as the file plays. And in fact that's very, very useful, because it means that we can automate that data. Now I don't remember which tutorial it's in, but there is a tutorial in which I introduced to you the use of automation for your volume and panning on a track. So if I choose the volume automation mode here, and remember that I can choose the grabber tool, and I can put automation points in and thereby change the volume over time while the file plays back. Well, I can do exactly the same for the plugins, and to do that, let's get rid of the automation on the volume for now and go back to waveform view. To enable automation for your plugin, what you need to do is go to the auto button that is at the top of the dialog, well, the dialog box for that plugin. Click on that, and it comes up with another dialog, which where with all the parameters for that plugin down the side on the left hand side here. So decay is here, diffusion is here, and so on. So what you do is you choose the parameters that you want to be able to automate. So I'm going to choose decay because I want that to be able to change over time, perhaps. So I double click that and it pops over to the right hand side. I could do it just by clicking and then pressing add, but double clicking is obviously quicker. So I could change high filter cut through time as well. So OK that. And then if you go over to this drop down list again, which gives you the track view selector, you'll notice at the bottom it's got FXA, which is referring to the plugin, and then it's got deverb, which is obviously referring to the reverb plugin that we've got in at the moment. Then you can choose, well, we chose decay and HF cut, so if I choose decay, then I come up with another one of these automatable lines, and I can then change that over time. Incidentally, you notice that the faders that are automatable have now gone a rather pretty green colour, and now that I've put in those edit points, if I play it back, you will notice the decay one is now moving. Now obviously reverb is not something that you're likely to want to change over time, because for the most part reverb remains the same, that's unless you're trying to impose some kind of fancy special effect. But things like, I don't know, well, EQ you might want to change over time for various reasons. There's certainly other things with parameters you might want to change over time. So that's how you do that. And then obviously if you want to remove any of those because they're, because you don't need them, go back into the auto thing, double click on the parameter that you don't need to automate, and that gets removed from this right hand list. So OK that, and then once again if I go to this FX, it's just got the decay on it rather than the high frequency cut.